All right, good evening, and we're going to go ahead and get started, but one last little, call out. If you would like tonight, if you feel like you might need it translated, we have Claudia right here. Just feel free to make your way down, and she can help you understand it. And so otherwise, we're gonna turn it over to Ms. Seahack here, and we'll get it started.
Hey. Hello, and welcome to College Planning and Financial Aid Night. Yay! So before we begin, we thought we'd introduce the counseling department. I'm Ms. Seahack. I have students with the last names A through DI. There's Ms. Kurtz, who has students DO through H. Ms. Biebel, who has students I through N. Ms. Olson, who has students O through R. Mr. Corey, who has students S through Z. And Ms. McCurdy, who has students in the Success Center. And Mr. Lugie, who is our IEP coordinator. Another thing before we begin, if you are not a part of the Google Classroom, make sure that you get this code, make sure your students are a part of it. It's really important. It has information about scholarships, deadlines, applications, all important things. So I'm gonna leave this up for maybe a minute, make sure you get a picture of it, and make sure you're in the right one. All good? Everybody good? Okay. So, education and training after high school. All of the fastest growing jobs require post-high school education or training. So whether it be trade school, 2 or 4 year college, apprenticeship, military, a career, they all are gonna require some sort of education, training, or certification. So it's really important that we talk about these things to help plan. So how do we identify what path we want to take? An important thing to notice is skills and interests that you have. So say you're really good at math, something on the math route, arts, those types of things are going to help you identify what path you might want to take, identify working conditions, your values, your lifestyle choices. Those are also important things to notice. Personal consideration and getting experience. So maybe you thought that you wanted to go into the medical field, you tried something out and you're like, this isn't for me. Getting that experience is gonna help you find your path. Another resource that we have that all students should have, it's part of the school, we all have an account here, is Naviance. It's important that you guys look at this. It also has ways to get involved in the planning and advising process. So there's building resumes, completing surveys that help you find your path, some interest surveys, manage timelines, deadlines for making decisions about colleges. It also helps you research colleges and technical schools. Looking at maybe their class size, where they're located, what majors they have, and their admission requirements. You can also compare your GPAs to certain colleges and find a college match. So you can put your GPA in, your classes, and see what colleges may better line with what you need. You can also research careers on here and create plans for your future. And how you get on Naviance is we have a direct link on the Collinsville website. So you would log into your school email / Google account. You either click on the link from the website and then click on the single sign on and you're ready to go. And yeah. Okay. So factors to consider when choosing a school. These are all very important as well. So location, do you want to go somewhere further away? Do you want to be somewhere in Illinois, somewhere close by? The size, do you want a big school, a small school? Academics, does the school have your major? Make sure it has your major. There have been students that have dream schools, and they find out it's not the school that has something that they want to be involved in. Expenses, that's a very important part of this process. So is it affordable? Can I get in-state tuition? What scholarships do they offer? That's something to consider when you're starting to do this college planning. Financial aid, housing, do they have on-campus housing? Facilities, activities, is there stuff that I want to join to get involved to make the big transition from high school to college easier? And then your personal well-being. Another amazing resource that you can use is Big Future. So you can take all those things like location, major, and then you can plug it into Big Future, and it'll help you find the colleges that also have those things that you may want. So again, the location, the college size, is it a big school, is it a small school? This is an awesome resource that we would suggest you use.
Right. So, in general, the minimum requirements for any college admissions is 4 years of English, 3 to 4 years of math. We usually recommend that every student has 4 years of math because you will have to do math in college. Whether it's, and when we're talking college, a lot of times it's a general term. I mean, it includes vocational training, like if you're thinking Ranken, or you're thinking a 4-year university like Harvard. Doesn't matter. Anywhere in there, they all require some sort of math when you get there. And so having a 4th year of math, whether it's required or not, is important. So that's why it's 3 to 4 years. A lot of schools will have 3 years of science. The vocational training schools, not so much, but most 4-year universities will have 3 years of science requirement, 3 years of social studies, and then 2 years of foreign language, art, or music. The best thing, though, to do to know whether you are, what the schools actually require is to contact the schools that your students are interested in, because some schools have other requirements that may not be on this list. This is just a general requirement list. And so I would definitely check with the individual schools that your student is interested in. In addition to certain classes, other things that are considered are GPA. That's even more and more weighted heavily, especially as SAT and ACT and those scores are becoming less weighted. And a lot of schools have gone test optional, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But then activities and leadership, more things that, and leadership and activities doesn't have to be just school related. It could be stuff in the community, church. It could be a job that your student has as far as, or family responsibilities. Sometimes that comes into play. So it's not just school activities, but that can play a big part if your student has a lot of leadership in this school. And in addition to that, a lot of schools have an essay, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but basically it could be anywhere from a 300-word essay to a 650-word essay, and that piece of the application is also now weighted more and more heavily because it allows your student to stand out, and it's a way that they can be a more individualized application versus just listing some activities and a GPA. Another thing that some applications have, not all applications do, and so I would definitely pay attention to whether it does or not, are recommendations from teachers, counselors, community members, coaches, things like that. And if it doesn't require it, I would not submit a letter of recommendation. All they're going to do is throw it in the trash, to be honest. But if it does ask, or if it says optional, I would think about sending one, because they do want them and they will read them. But if, for example, the University of Illinois, they do not require a letter of recommendation, and they tell us every year when we meet with them, we will throw it away. We will not even read it. So I would save yourself some time and not get it. So definitely, when you guys are looking at applications and what is required, these types of things are important to note, because some schools require them, some schools don't. In addition to this, there are other school forms that sometimes are required by applications, and that require the counselor to fill out, or other academic people like teachers and just take note of what is required and what's not. And again, through this whole process, the counselors are in this, like, we're downstairs. We're just a phone call away. We're happy to help your student or you through this whole process. And so don't let all these different things kind of scare you. We are all in this together. And so we just wanted to make you all aware, like sometimes it's more than just the application of, name, address, a list of different things. So if you, last year we all took, the seniors took the SAT, juniors are getting ready to take the SAT in April, and so there are some other test dates. If you are a senior family and you are not happy with your SAT score and you want to take it again, these are the upcoming test dates for this fall and early spring. And so I would take a picture of that. How you sign up, we do not at the school sign you up. It is strictly through the College Board website, and your student should have an account. And so they just go to collegeboard.org and sign into their account. If they don't have one yet, they should create one. If they have an issue with their account, they can come on down and we can get it figured out. But this is where they sign up to retake it. And SIUE has it, SLU I think has them. I mean, there's a variety of different institutions that have it around the area that your student can go to and then take it. We have free SAT practice on Khan Academy, and so that would be a great place that they can link their scores and start practicing. If you are a junior family, if you want to practice ahead of time or take one ahead of time, this is, again, these dates are national test dates, so you are welcome to sign up and take one of the dates on the screen as well. If your student receives free or reduced lunch, you can take it 2 times for free, and so just contact your counselor and we can get you a fee waiver code for that. And again, like I said, there's more and more, like most of the schools right now are still operating under test optional. There's a few schools, MIT, Harvard, I think, and one other school that I've seen that is not test optional next year, or they're thinking about not being test optional. And so definitely check that out if that's you. But most of them still are. And so what that means is the GPA, the essay, the activities, all of that stuff is weighted more heavily. That also means that they're looking at individual classes, not necessarily even the overall GPA. They're looking at how you did in Algebra 1 freshman year, or they're looking at how you did in your science classes, or they're looking at, like basically individual grades, and they're making decisions off of yes or no off of that. So if you, let's just say freshman year, maybe didn't do so hot in algebra, but then for whatever reasons, we may want to think about sending in a written statement of explaining what happened. Like maybe it was just a rough year, maybe someone passed away in your family, or maybe you moved, or I don't know. There's a lot of reasons, or maybe it was just a struggle and you had to really persevere through it. But regardless, whatever it is, that's just something to be aware of. Is with test optional, it's still going to be hard to get in to some schools, and we just need to look at all the different specifics. We get a lot of questions about how many schools should we apply to? What's the right number? What's the, how do we do this? And there really is no like too few, too many. It's whatever's right for your family. In a way, it's almost all the schools have a college application fee. So each school you apply to, a lot of them will have a $30 or $40 type application. Just to apply, you have to pay that, so that some cost can be a factor in deciding how many. Mr. Corey is going to talk about a program that we have here a little bit later that will hopefully help with some of that. But in general, there's 3, you want to apply to 3 different types of schools. You want to have some safety schools where you are most secure in getting something that you can that you can apply to and afford, and you get in and you are like 100% like it's a done deal if you get in. And you can pay for it, no big deal. A match school, and is something that you're kind of in the middle. Like you probably can get in, you probably maybe could afford it, maybe it's kind of like something like kind of in the middle of either. And then a stretch school is something either you don't know you can get in or you don't know you can afford yet because scholarship stuff hasn't come out, and so there's some question on whether you really, it's going to be like a reach to try and get in either academically or cost-wise. And so this is just some general like thoughts on on how many for each idea, but again, each family is different. And so we'll just kind of, if you have any questions about that, we can talk about that on a more individual basis. The other thing that you guys may run into, it's a little confusing that kids, I was talking to a kid actually today about that, and he's like, what is this early decision stuff? And trying to explain it to him, there's basically three different, there's caveats to each, but there's three different types of admissions processes. There's early decision, which means if you apply to a school and you mark early decision, that is binding. That means if that school says yes to you, if you apply, and so you have to first apply by the deadline, and if that school says yes to you, that means you have to go and you have to pay whatever it is that they said to pay. It's a legal agreement, and there really is, there's some ways to get out of it, but it's very hard. And so if it is early decision and you guys decide to, if you as a family decide to do that, just know if they say yes and they give you a dollar amount, that is, you have to pay that and you have to go. And some years we've seen it and it's worked out because the family doesn't have a whole lot, or the school gave the scholarship, and it's, it works out. But I've seen it also where families have to pay like $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year because they've marked this early decision, and then they're obligated to go. This is usually more like the Ivy League schools, Northwestern, Vanderbilt, those types of schools. So you won't see that option in like SIUE, U of I, those types of things, but it is out there. And so just be very, and I would say if you just are thinking about that, you want to probably do some financial aid, have some financial aid conversations. I feel like it's feedback, but I don't know, I'm talking to Glenn. Anyway, does it sound weird all of a sudden? Okay. Anyway, so I would just talk to the financial aid office about your situation, fill out the FAFSA, what's it called? The FAFSA, an early FAFSA type program, just to see where you end up, in case you decide to mark that. Another option is early action. That again, you apply by a certain deadline, and what that is agreeing to is you find out early, but it is not binding. It means that you can still choose to not go there once you find the cost, once you find that yes, you've been accepted here and you've also been accepted to these other schools. You can then still choose. It just basically early action means you can find out early, okay? And then the last main one is regular decision, and you basically apply by the deadline. You find out, by when they release, and it's usually the last admission cycle. There is a fourth one that's kind of it's a different kind. It's called rolling admission, and basically they accept applications all year long, and they will only stop when they are full, okay? And so like SIUE has rolling admission. They have an early scholarship deadline of December 1st, I think it was last year, but they were accepting applications all the way through the summer. And so that's kind of how that is. An example of an early action / regular decision, U of I has a early action deadline of November 1st, and then anybody who applies before then, they find out early, and then their regular decision deadline is January 1st. And then anything after that, basically their application season closes, and you cannot apply to the U of I after January 1st. So you see kind of how that's different. And so that's kind of trying to explain the different things that you might see as the application cycle goes along this year. One other thing that I'm going to kind of touch on is the Common Application. I know that a lot of you might see this, and basically this is an application that allows for and I think it's now even closer to 1,000 schools are utilizing this application, and you basically all can use one application to apply to a variety of schools. In this application, there's an essay, there can be teacher recommendations, there can be a secondary school report, and inside there's like the general application, and then each school has its own little application inside of it. And inside those little school applications, there is sometimes an additional essays or different things. If your student has decided to do this, it's going to take not just like an hour or two to fill it out. It's multiple days of work, and have them come down and see us and talk to us about it. It sometimes is easier just to apply to the individual schools than it is to do this. Sometimes this is the route to do. It just really depends on the type of applications. And so that's why if your student is thinking about using the Common App, maybe have them come talk to us first before they get started. So for example, SIUE is on here, and SIUE's application only takes maybe 10 minutes to do. It's really simple. But if they decide to do the Common App, they're looking at hours of work for, it really doesn't pay, that doesn't pay off at all. We would say do the SIUE application. But so before they even decide to do this, I would encourage them all to come and see us, or you guys reach out, and we'll be happy to talk about whether to do this or not. And with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Ms. Kurtz.
All right, so now you're ready to apply to college. So if you're not going to be doing the Common Application and going to that website, you're going to look for each individual college's application. And so to do that, you're going to go to your search engine or Google or whatever your favorite is, and you're going to type in the college's name. On the main page of the college, their home page, usually there's a big button that says Apply Now or Apply, and that's where you're going to go to find the application. Some things to remember is you want to fill out the application completely. You want to look for supplemental forms. Do you need a letter of recommendation? Because you want to make sure that you talk to those people, get the form from us, and talk to your counselor or teacher, whoever you need a recommendation from. And then after the application is completely filled out and sent in, that is when you will send in your transcript. So students will need to be the ones to request their transcript. All they have to do is go to our counseling department website, and right there it says request transcript, and as long as they are signed into their Google, it's very quick. They just say like Google form, their name, what college is it going to, and they need to complete a transcript request for each college. So I would say after each college application, then the next step would be to request the transcript for that college so that it's sent there. So it's not just once, you don't list all the colleges, it's a separate one for each thing. And so that's also going to be the same procedure to request your transcript if it's for a college or military or anything else you will need. Some other things to consider when completing your application is to check the deadlines. Like Ms. Wilson was talking about, there's all sorts of deadlines. Each college is different, and also there may be different deadlines for scholarships from those colleges. So make sure you're looking at all of those dates and completely filling out the application. All of them look different, and you just want to make sure you go through each part and check it. We're happy to help your student or double check things. You just want to make sure it's completely filled out before sending. Make sure that you have the counselor forms, recommendations, anything needed. And then another thing is if they need the test, your students' test scores, do they have to be directly sent from the testing agency, or can they just get them from our transcript that we send? So that will be a process too. You can just go and they can log into their College Board and make sure that they have their test scores sent directly to the college. Students with free or reduced lunch may have their application fees waived, so before they hit send on those applications, if your student has free or reduced lunch, just have them come talk to their counselor so that we can get that fee waiver for them. And then with the essays, not every application has an essay, but if your application does, just make sure that your student is having someone proofread it. Our writing center is great for this. Our teachers are really helpful, and we're always willing to help your student with that as well. And then just a reminder for the letters of recommendation, again, you want to give people at least 2 weeks and have the form from our office. So the sooner the better to start looking at those applications to figure out what you're going to need to complete them. For students that are considering SWIC or transferring from SWIC, the top 20% of our graduating class last year attended for free. That is huge. So if that's your student and they're in the top 20%, that may be something to consider. Many four-year colleges have agreements with SWIC, especially those within Illinois. As you're working with the advisor at SWIC, you're also going to want to be talking to the advisor at your student's school that they're wanting to transfer to make sure that everything's lining up. A lot of times those SWIC advisors might have something from that college that's helping to guide them, but you just always want to be connecting with whatever the final goal is, whatever that school is that they're planning to attend. You want to make sure that you're in contact with them to make sure the classes line up so you don't waste any time or money while you're there. So some other considerations for senior year, grades are still important. Although they complete applications sometimes at the very beginning of the year, the colleges will receive their final transcript, so it is still important that they continue on with their success in those classes senior year. Also, there is not a good or a bad college. If it's going to be a good fit for you. Does it have your major? Is it the size? Is it the location? So just make sure that you and your family are going to visit and finding a good fit for you. And then, no, you're good. For student athletes, so anyone that think they might play sports at a Division I or II college needs to make sure that they are looking at the NCAA or the NAIA requirements. So we are always here to help your student, and I know our coaches are too, but it is really important that you all are working with them on checking the requirements, because ultimately you and your student are responsible for making sure the requirements are met. So the first step will be registering with the Eligibility Center, and they do want the test scores directly sent. So that will be next on the list. And then you will also have transcripts sent there as well. So just make sure you read through everything thoroughly, and we are always happy to help.
Okay, I'll just move this back up. Just so you guys know, I'm the second tallest female counselor in our department. I'm kind of proud of that. All right, so at this point, your students should be fairly comfortable with our counseling website. You might not be as much. So our counseling website is amazing. It's a great resource for all the information that we collectively have stored up here in our brains. So take a moment to actually sit down with your student and go through what's on that website. As you can see, we have it linked up there, and it's also linked on the main khawks.org website. We have everything in there all about academics, so graduation requirements, websites for test prep, course offering guide, which is awesome, different summer opportunities, the AP course information, which is pretty important information to know. We even have resources for our personal and social aspects of our lives. So parenting resources for you guys. If you're struggling to talk about a certain subject, you can check out how other parents tend to do it, or how we would help you out with that one. We also have different support group information, so if anybody's struggling with anything, a lot of that is on there. So the main reason you're here tonight is about post-high school planning, obviously, so that is something that we know you're interested in. On our senior survival guide is a good stack of information. And when you check that link, there's going to be an entire packet that we give our seniors when we do our one-on-one senior talks. And I know sometimes those things grow legs and they disappear. I have a 17-year-old, I understand. So it's easily accessible on there as well. Also, we have information about our vocational careers, websites to research our careers in colleges, links to Naviance and all that, and NCAA eligibility information. That is a tricky subject to try to figure out sometimes. So you want to make sure you are well aware of the different NCAA requirements and that your student has gotten to that, because we don't want you to go to a school and all of a sudden they missed out on an opportunity to play to play ball, and you're upset. So please make sure you're checking that out. We also have information for our various military recruiters. They tend to stop by every once in a while, so if military is kind of in your student's future, make sure that you're reaching out to us to figure out a time that they can meet and talk. Scholarships are online. We have got thousands of scholarships available for your easy perusal. Trying to figure that one out. So we have scholarships that are everywhere, from local scholarships that we may only have 1 or 2 people or sometimes nobody actually applies for. So take a look at those local scholarships. We're talking the local VFWs, we're talking local foundations. Please take the time to check those out. We also have national scholarships that are available. Those might be a little bit more difficult to get, but they are out there and there's tons of them available. The scholarships website is broken up all over the place, so if you're not sure exactly where to start looking at September. They're listed by months. You can take a look at that, go down the line, see what would work for your student, and apply. We also have our virtual calming room. That's a place where you can seek out some social emotional resources and help. We also have a lot of resources available for a variety of physical and mental health needs. There's stuff on there for your student in high school. There's stuff on there for your niece that's 2 years old that needs to chill out a little bit. There's yoga, relaxation, mindfulness, hotlines, resources all over the place. So the way that we look for scholarships, some people can liken it to being a part-time job. Because if you want to see the feedback, you have to put in the work. And there is no easy way to do scholarships. Now, there are multiple resources that you can find scholarships that you may qualify for, your employment, your credit unions that you're in, any clubs that you belong to, the colleges that you're applying to. Those are going to be a great resource for the scholarships that are directed directly to your student. Take a look, get used to looking on the actual college's website and knowing where you can find those scholarship opportunities. Some of them, like SWIC, there is one form that you fill out and then it automatically kind of helps you figure out what other scholarships you may qualify for. Like I said, our private local scholarships are a great resource. Our national scholarship searches, there's lots of search engines that you can go on. We have a couple listed here. Going Mary is a great resource too, because you can build your own personal profile, and Going Mary will kind of direct you towards scholarships that may meet some of your requirements or some of your background. And it also, they have an essay scholarship resource that you can write an essay and it'll say, hey, these 5 other essays also, or scholarships are also asking for an essay about your favorite dog. So you can use that one essay for all these multiple ones, and it's so great. And then here recently, I just saw it, I don't know, maybe over the weekend. I have a TikTok problem. I can say it. And I noticed that one of my favorite resources for collecting scholarship information has a TikTok. And her name is actually Ryan Kelly, if you're interested in looking that up. I utilize her for a lot of our scholarships that I put on the website. There's also different people that are on TikTok that will talk about college admissions. They'll break it down a little bit easier, so they are also a great resource, especially for our kids. You know, if you're spending hours on TikTok, make it useful. And then when it comes down to it, there's no substitute for visiting the colleges that you're interested in, right? You want to get there, you want to smell the sweet air, or if there's a manure pile next door, you want to know that too. So setting up an appointment to go visit is a great opportunity to actually see, feel, touch, smell, vibe with your environment that you're going to go into. And when you go, you also want to set up appointments with admissions. You know, have a conversation with those admissions advisors. You know, hey, what are you looking for in a student? Financial aid, because you want to know how much it's going to cost. You want to do a campus tour, including housing, because you never know. Maybe you want to stay on campus. Also, your academic major. You know, sometimes you have high hopes for what's going on and you want to go into a bio major, for instance, and you get there and this place has one Bunsen burner, there's broken desks, and maybe the department isn't what you thought it was going to be. So that's important to know before you actually check that box and you make that check payment and you move in. You also want to check out the different programs you're interested in. Band is important if you're interested in student government. If you want to join the bowling team, check that out. So one way you can do that is we allow our juniors and seniors 2 college visit days a year. So we kind of need to know in advance, so it's important that you let our attendance office know. We kind of prefer that you take a look on weekends and school holidays. A lot of open houses are actually given along like a long holiday, so I'm sure there might be some maybe Labor Day, maybe over Christmas break. They should have some available. At least a day in advance, we need to know. And Ms. Kim down here will take it. She's our attendance lady if nobody knew. You are responsible for making up your classwork, so please don't take a college day when you have a final or a test. That wouldn't be good. So try to figure out a date that works best for you and works best for your teachers, and take advantage of that. And this is a sample form, kind of what it looks like. And one thing that kind of came from COVID, which has been really great, is that we've seen an influx of virtual college visits. So while it may not be financially feasible to go across country and visit Stanford, you could probably do a virtual visit day. And those different visit days, you know, you can pretty much do it on your own time. So you're not waiting for those special dates. You can join emailing lists or a mailing list of the colleges you're interested in. That way you kind of know what's going on. You can talk to as many people as possible that are associated with the school, try to get an idea on when things are happening. You're going to also check the stats. You want to take a closer look at the demographics of the campus. And these are all things that you can find online. Don't be afraid to lurk. You know, sometimes the most information that you gather is just from being a creeper on somebody's page. And especially like Bama, sorority, TikTok, again, I have a problem. You're gonna know exactly what's happening on that campus. You also want to take advantage of online offerings such as like virtual Q&A panels, info sessions, different chats that they may offer. And individual universities and departments also might have virtual visits. So the website might have somebody walking around doing a live stream. You can also find YouTube videos all over the place of somebody taking you around campus, showing you the dining hall, and all those great information that come with it. CampusTours.com is a great resource to find those videos. And UVisit also has more than 600 schools in a virtual tour database. And one thing that's coming up, Jason's going to talk about, so get a good idea of what's happening.
Okay, we are almost done. We got about 6 more slides, I think. No, ma'am. Question. So one of the events that we ran last year, and it's expanded this year, is an on-site admission. So last year we brought 6 schools in. We brought SIUE, Carbondale, Eastern, Western, UMSL, and Missouri State. And what they did is they admitted kids on the spot that day. Now, all students had to apply in advance to these institutions. Our counselors did a lot of work in advance as far as getting their transcripts sent so they could get processed. But on that day, we had over 100 students go into the Aux Gym over here, meet with 6 different institutions, and were told that day that they were admitted. So we're going to run that event this year again. We expanded it out to 2 other schools, being Murray State and Central Arkansas. We have reached out to them in the fall. I reached out to them again just to confirm all of them are coming. I'm waiting to hear back from just a few, just to see if they still want to participate. So we are going to go talking to all the classes tomorrow or next week about this event. All it takes from your student is to fill out a Google form letting us know that they want to participate and what schools they want to apply to. After that, we're going to reach out to all the students, have them come to the library and complete all of the applications that they so chose to apply to. So they will do them individually. We will have them submit all of their applications that they want. We will also have them sign documents so that we can submit their transcripts as well. So it's great. Some of these schools do charge, like Ms. Olson said, $30, $40. All fees are waived on that day. So that day we save probably $1,400 in application fees in one day. So a great opportunity for your student. Again, not a lot of work in advance, just letting us know that they want to participate. So to get help with any of this, you're more than welcome to come out and see your counselor. We have an appointment on our counseling website. All you have to do is to schedule an appointment, show your teacher your appointment, and then come out and see us. Well, again, we're going to be doing class visits on all world history and world geography classes next week. I have several colleges already contacting me about coming in and speaking to students. They will be on the calendar. They will be on the Google Classroom as well, so definitely check that. That's when we push out a lot of information. Also, in addition to this financial aid information night, we're going to have a financial aid completion night. The differences are this. Tonight, you're going to get a lot of information about what financial aid is. On the 12th, you can actually come to the school and complete your financial aid, submit it that night. So definitely, if you have any questions after the first, when it opens up, you want to come in and get help to fill it out, please come up here. We will be here at 6, ourselves with several other folks from the community to help complete the application. We also will be helping students during study halls the entire September and October. So these are the dates that we will be in the library lab. Students are welcome to come up during their study hall. We encourage them not to miss class, but definitely during their study hall or lunch if they so choose. We will be down in the Vocational Center lab on the 14th and 21st. So anybody's welcome. If you have a question about a scholarship, an application, financial aid, if it's after October 1, we can help with all of those things. So we encourage the students to come in. If you are writing an essay for a scholarship or for college, I know they all stress this, definitely read over it. Have yourself read over it, your teacher read over it. You can also take it to the Writing Center. We have someone in the Writing Center every single hour of the day to look over college applications or essays for classes as well. You are welcome to email it to them as well so they can look over it. You don't actually have to be sitting there in person. That way they can review your essay before you submit it. I know Ms. Olson stressed this, but the essay is just as important all of the application. The essay is what sets you apart from someone else, especially if you're applying to a very competitive school. I know she mentioned U of I several times. If you're looking at engineering at their school, the essay is what's going to set you apart, because everybody that's applying to engineering in U of I has great grades and a great SAT score. So they just request you send it 2 days in advance. I'm not going to go too much into this because we have somebody from SLU that's going to cover it way more in depth than on my one slide. One thing I do want to stress, the application is free. There are several scam websites out there. You want to make sure that you go to the correct website. You don't want to get all the way to the end and it asks you for money. It actually stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. So you will not pay for this in one shape or form. Can't stress enough, we have our completion night on October 12th at 6 o'clock. So again, if you want to come up here, get assistance completing your application, we will send out information that we need in order to help you or to assist you with filling it out as well. So now I'm going to introduce Ms. Newton. We've partnered with the St. Louis Scholarship Foundation for assistance as well. So she's going to come up and talk a little bit about her program. It's been a great resource for us and our students. So without further ado.
Pull this back down. All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Dominisha, and I'm the Senior Student Advisor at the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. The Scholarship Foundation has been working with Collinsville for a couple of years. I had the pleasure of being the advisor working with Collinsville last year, and I think it went really well. I got to meet with a lot of students, and I just wanted to come here tonight to inform the students and families that are in the room tonight about our organization and how we might be able to support you. So the Scholarship Foundation, we're a 100-year-old not-for-profit organization, and we do 3 main things. The first is in our name, the money. So we have scholarship programs, and we also have an interest-free student loan. And our financial aid is need-based, so we're looking at the number that's calculated when you do the FAFSA application. So we have need-based financial aid that is also renewable. So students that are awarded funding through us, they are eligible to apply for these fundings for multiple years until they graduate. So we're not just giving students money for 1 year, we're giving them money until they reach their goal of graduation. And then the second thing that we do with the foundation is advising. So I'm a part of the advising program, and we work with students and families in group settings and individual settings to answer their questions and give them the information they need to know so that they can make informed decisions for themselves about college admissions and financial aid. And then the third thing is advocacy. So we're advocating for students in a number of ways on the state, federal, and institutional level. So I will be on Collinsville's campus this school year, at least once a week. Students will have the opportunity to sign up to meet with me if you want to learn more about our financial aid programs, to see if you're eligible, and get more information on the application process. We're also helping students with the financial aid component. I know the counselors have made it very clear that they have a lot of great information and they know what they're talking about, and they're here to support you. So think about me as an addition to that, to support you in reaching your goal if you already know you're going to college or if you're thinking about college. I will never turn any student away. You don't have to know everything when you come and speak with me. We're here to help you identify where you might want to go, assess where you are, and what steps you might need to take to get there, and get more information, again, about our funding opportunities. So I'm happy I get to introduce the organization and myself to you all. I look forward to potentially getting to know your students this school year and supporting them in reaching their goals. And I have some business cards on me if anyone would like to get one of those. I'll probably stick around into the end if you want to come up and get a business card. So thank you all.
Thank you, Dominique. And it's been a great partnership. We've utilized it a lot, so I encourage students to come down and meet with her as well. So without further ado, Mr. Rice from SLU is going to be giving the presentation about financial aid specifically. So we're going to get to his presentation so you can learn all about the ins and outs of financial aid.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Ms. Olson for the invite to come tonight. I promise I don't have much more than like a couple hours worth of stuff, so I'm sure you all said to yourselves, hey, this coming Wednesday night, we're so excited because that's that night we get to go talk about financial aid and all this college stuff, and so I promise not to do two things. You know, I think the federal slide deck for the FAFSA presentation is about 250 slides, and I've seen somebody try to do that once and everybody was asleep. I think I have about 25, so we'll move through pretty quick. But please don't leave tonight without your questions answered. I'll do my very best to answer all of those questions, and if I can't, we'll certainly get them back to your counselors. You have an awesome team of people to work with. I hope you say thank you to them all the time and appreciate them very much. So just some of the things that we'll talk about tonight. Just different types of financial aid, how to apply for financial aid. We've seen a little bit of that already, but just some of those things. A FAFSA overview, just a couple slides on that. Financial aid offers, when you kind of start getting to that time of year, maybe early spring, when they start sending financial aid offers. And it'll make me big. Gotcha. There you go. Much better. Oh. That'll be really important. It's really important to understand the differences between offers. Sometimes the school that's offered you the biggest dollar amount on the bottom hasn't made you the best offer, and we'll talk about what that means. And then just a financial aid timeline. Just some of the goals for the night to help us understand what financial aid, the financial aid has these rewards, or these different goals. First of all, to reward our students for their hard work. I mean, they've been working hard on all kind of things, their academics, their talents. So we'll talk about ways to reward them for those things. Certainly financial aid has a finite amount, it has a budget, and so the evaluating a family's ability to pay so we can split that money out in the most equitable way possible, and distributing finite resources in again, the best equitable way. And then providing a balance between gift aid, which are the grants and scholarships, the things that you don't have to repay, have a balance of that with loans and work-study programs. So just some of the differences, the gift aid. When we talk about financial aid, this might be one of the most important slides that you see, just to slow this whole thing down. We think financial aid must be a million different things, but it's really just these four different things. So scholarships are those merit-based pieces of awards, the things that your students have earned with their academics, with their talents. It's things that schools are going to give them based on merit. Grants are the types of financial aid that are based on need. FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid, is the cornerstone of that. That determines need, and that's fed to the schools, and we get grants from the federal government, the state government, from individual schools. But those are the grants. They're good. So merit are scholarships based on merit, grants based on need. We'll talk about loans, and financial aid is obviously in the news today with talking about loan forgiveness and all that kind of stuff. And if we have a little bit of time at the end, I'm happy to take questions on that. And then the other possibility are work study opportunities. And parents, I'll just say this in case I forget to say it later, and students, I'm giving you a hard time, but if your student says, Mom, I can't work on campus, I didn't get a federal work study award, they still can, because we need more workers, more student workers than we have federal work study money. It's the same job, same pay, same things. So, and I say this to parents and to students, there's way more benefit to that than just even the monetary benefit. You have a special connection to some folks on campus that are also watching out for you. Taking home a little cash doesn't hurt either, but so I do encourage you, if that's a possibility for you, to take advantage of work study. So I think this is the only slide I have that's really St. Louis University based when we come out. I mean, these guys have already told us you're all going to SLU anyway, so I don't have to worry about that, right? But no, this is very generic, but as you start talking to schools, it's really important to know what might be pushed to you and what you might need to ask about, all right? So merit-based aid, we've talked about things based on ACT, GPAs. We are a test-optional school as well, so primarily looking at GPA. We look at ACT and SAT. That can only help your merit award, but it can't hurt you. So our general merit awards that we push out based on those kind of criteria run from like $10,000 to $25,000. But then we also have a President's Scholarship, which is a full tuition scholarship, and it requires a separate application. Students write an essay, they come to campus for interviews, and they do all kind of stuff. It's a really pretty big deal. But that's a separate process, and you don't want to miss that opportunity, but you kind of, I always say, get to know your admission counselors really, really well so that they're pushing that information to you. But those are things to watch for on the websites of the schools that you're looking at. Is there anything else we can apply for? So that kind of represents our really high merit-based type of award. And then our Martin Luther King Jr. Scholarship is kind of a community service-based scholarship, and that as well is a really big deal. Students apply, they write essays, they do interviews for those awards. So those are just a couple different examples of other awards that might be available, but they might not automatically be pushed to you, so keep your eye out for those kind of things. Different deadlines, December 1st seems a million miles away, but so did September 1st, so now what are we, like half a week away or something like that. So it gets here fast, so watch those deadlines. February 1st is our deadline for the applications for our Martin Luther King Scholarship. And February 1st these days is a really good kind of priority deadline to keep in mind. With FAFSA moving a few years ago from January back to October, a lot of the priority deadlines have moved from April 1st back to February 1st. So that's a good date just to remember in general. When we talk about loans and different things like that, it's important to kind of put some dollar amounts. So I'm going to make sure I didn't skip a slide there. Nope, okay. And they're definitely in the news today, but I want to give you some information on loans, but I also will talk about some numbers, but I am the guy that wants to talk about how do we pay for a degree and not just a semester. And I want to give you common sense kind of numbers. Loans aren't good or bad. But we should understand if we're going to borrow some loans, what does that look like in repayment, unless I get forgiven. But we should never take that for granted, that our loans are going to be forgiven. And so we want to understand what they look like in repayment. But what you see in front of you here is there's three loan programs we'll talk about. We'll talk about the Federal Student Loan Program, the Federal Parent Loan Program, and we'll also talk about private student loans. And I should tell you, I didn't even introduce myself very well, but as I stand here in front of you now, I'm really kind of excited. This is the second year in a row now that after like a decade, I did not have to fill out a FAFSA because my 3 kids are finally through school. So as I say all these things to you, this is not theory to me. I would just say I am living the dream with you. And yes, I too have my parent loans that I am paying for my 3 kids, and would be happy to talk to you about the different schools that we went through in those specific examples. But as we think of the federal student loan program, it is not a credit qualifying loan program. It's going to be driven right off of the FAFSA. As long as your students fill out a FAFSA, that opens up eligibility into the federal student loan program. As a first-year student, your students can borrow $5,500. Second year, they can borrow $6,500. Third year, they can borrow $7,500. And fourth year, they can borrow $7,500 again. Of those amounts, of that $5,500, you see 2 different columns in there. The column of $3,500, that represents the maximum of the $5,500. $3,500 of that can be a subsidized loan, meaning the subsidy is that the government is paying the interest on that loan for your student while they're in school. So if they qualify for, and it's based on need, and we'll talk about what need means in just a second, but if they qualify for that full $3,500, the government's paying the interest on that for them while they're in school. If they borrow the other $2,000, that's an unsubsidized loan. It would have interest accruing on it. It's not compounding while they're in school. It's just adding up on the side. It would capitalize when they are ready to go in repayment. So it's that subsidized loan amount that goes up $1,000 each year as they go through. So that's the federal student loan program. And I showed you that I was saying first year, second year, third year. Those increments are, first year is defined as a student who has less than 30 credit hours. Well, used to be, I didn't really need to talk about it, but now a lot of your students are taking college credit in high school, and your student may actually come into college with more than 30 credit hours, and in that case, they would qualify for the second year loan amount that first year. Or let's say they come in with 15 credit hours and they take 15 credit hours that fall semester. By spring semester, they may have another $1,000 of eligibility. So some of those things, don't get too lost in those weeds, but just know if they are bringing college credit in, they may have some additional loan eligibility. And the numbers you see on the far right column, they're under independent. Most of your students will be dependent, meaning they'll need your parent information on the FAFSA. But if they are independent, or if we have students that are able to do a dependency override, there's some additional loan eligibility out there. Or later on, we'll talk about a federal parent loan. That's a credit qualifying loan. If you're denied for that federal parent loan, your student then can borrow as an independent student. They would have either $4,000 or $5,000 per year more eligibility. So how do we apply for some of these scholarships and things? And the whole thing starts with the FAFSA. We talked about that just for a second ago. I think at this point, we mentioned FAFSA.com, and I think at this point, FAFSA.com has finally kind of been eliminated by the government. But yes, there used to be, it's the free application, but if you in the old days, if you logged into FAFSA.com, you would get to the end and they would ask you for your credit card because it was $80. So I think that's all gone now. All of the federal things now have been moved to studentaid.gov. The FAFSA, the loan applications, everything is at studentaid.gov. And I think we've got some slides in here to show you some screen prints of that. But that is the cornerstone of the financial aid process. I also want to mention CSS Profile because it is a legitimate application. It is not free. It's $25 for the first school that you apply to that requires it, and $15 for every school after that. There are about 400 schools across the country that use it. It's just a deeper dive into our own finances. It's not used for federal or state aid. It's used for institutional aid. And so if you have a school that requires it, that's up to you whether you want to fill it out. But not too many schools do. We, for a while, were using it for our international students to have a way to award need-based aid to them. And even we've gone away from that, and we award based on areas of the world now. But CSS Profile is legit if someone's asking you to complete that. Just a couple slides just to kind of show you some of the federal sites that are out there. Studentaid.gov, a lot of this is showing you information on public service loan forgiveness. We'll talk about a little more about that in a minute. But that's also out there on the federal site. But just it's just one site. So this is like where you would go to do the FAFSA. You can see the little blue arrows there. It was under the apply for aid, and then you'll click start here, and that's what you guys are going to be doing in October. Like if you come for the events on campus and things like that, and I think sometimes, please don't let us scare you about the FAFSA. We're like, oh my gosh, we're going to have to go to a workshop. It must be really hard. It is not. You can do it in about 30 minutes. Make sure you've got your tax information available, and you can even download your tax information right from the IRS. When you go through the FAFSA, there's a button you can click, and it takes you out to the IRS. You can click a button, it'll download your information right in there. So don't be afraid of the FAFSA. I still vote to get rid of it. I think there's an easier way to do it, but it's not hard, all right? October 1st is the kind of the kickoff to the whole financial aid year. That's when the FAFSA becomes available. And I really encourage you to file as close to October 1st as you can. Some of the financial aid that we talk about is first come, first serve, and so we use the information that comes off the FAFSA to award that, but sometimes some forms of aid are an allotment of funds that schools get, and we run out of it. So always apply as close to October 1st as you can, and then you won't have to worry about missing a deadline or for us running out of funds for you. Just a couple things about what does the FAFSA do? How does it calculate? It kind of takes information from families and students and it runs it through a need calculation. That's not the school's calculation. There are some things we can do with professional judgment if that information isn't always still accurate, because when you fill out the FAFSA this year, you'll use your 2021 tax returns. So prior years, so the tax return you filed this previous April, so you're not trying to estimate information and put it in there. So you can do it much faster. So sometimes information has changed from that. Somebody's lost a job. We've been, in normal years, we do a lot of professional judgment reviews. We do 200 or 300. In the last couple of years with the pandemic, we've done thousands. We've had to completely revamp how we look at information for that. So it's based on that. I spoke a minute ago about the IRS data retrieval tool, where in the FAFSA you can just click a button, it takes you out to the IRS, and you can download your tax information into the FAFSA. I would encourage you to take advantage of that tool. There's a process called verification. Some of the FAFSAs are selected by the Department of Ed for verification. Just means we have to verify, you have to document the information you put in the FAFSA. If you've used the data retrieval tool, that automatically verifies that FAFSA, the tax information you put in there. You don't have to provide copies of your tax return. So it simplifies that process quite a bit. You know, it's like in nights like this, one of the typical questions we get is we're a family where we've had a divorce and we're trying to figure out who goes on the FAFSA. And you can see it's just this real simple chart here. I mean, anybody could really figure it out, right? The most simple thing that I can tell you, and that is this. Technically, the parent that goes on the FAFSA is the parent that provides more than 50% of the support for the student for the year. That is typically whichever parent that they live with. But if you're in a situation where per divorce decree, every single thing is split 50-50, they live half the time with you and half the time with the other parent, and you split every cost 50-50, at the end of the day, you're just going to have to decide, and one parent will go on the FAFSA. And this is the miracle of it. Always that parent ends up to be the one that makes the least amount of money, because that plays out better on the FAFSA, right? And I'm saying that somewhat tongue-in-cheek and teasing, but it kind of happens that way sometimes. So don't overthink that, but at the end of the day, one parent's going to have to go on there, but technically it's whoever provides more than 50% of the support. Some of the tiebreakers might be usually whoever they live with, or who's providing their health insurance, or some things like that, right? So when we fill out a FAFSA, and this is going to be interesting, this is about the last year we'll actually talk about expected family contribution, because they're changing. All of the financial aid cornerstones these days feel like they're changing. But when you fill out the FAFSA, what we're filling that out for is to get a number that's called the expected family contribution number. And we in financial aid have more jargon than any. We can go to our conferences, we don't really even speak in whole sentence. It's like EFC, COA, we don't even, so I only want to give you two pieces of jargon tonight. One is EFC, and the other will be cost of attendance in just a second. But EFC, expected family contribution, can be anything from 0 to $999,000. From 0 to about $5,700 means that you're in federal Pell Grant range, the grant that comes straight from the federal government. This past year, that was from $6,895 down to a few $100s, depending on range. It goes in increments of about 100 on each EFC. So 0 to 5,700 would give you a federal Pell Grant. Though EFC is also fed to the state. I don't know the Illinois state cutoff. Missouri's 12,000. You guys know what your state cutoff is for EFC for state grant? Okay, it's probably pretty close. On the FAFSA site, there's a place you can click to see the EFC cutoffs for all of the states. And so again, in Missouri, it's like 12,000. I think it's pretty similar in Illinois. Our state grant runs around 2,800. You guys, your MAP grant used to be several thousand. Is it still up there, like 3,000 or 4,000? Right. So that's the second thing the EFC does. The first thing is it determines whether we get a federal grant. The federal Pell Grant's portable to any school you get. You can take it anywhere. State grants don't cross state lines. So if you qualify for your Illinois state grant, it doesn't typically transfer to other schools. I'm saying typically, it never does, but never say never. There could be a school out there that would honor it. But typically, state grants don't cross state lines. Then the third thing it does is that schools use that EFC number to determine their need-based grants that they would award. And at SLU, some people say, well, I'm not going to get anything, so I'm not going to fill out the FAFSA. Well, first of all, it opens up the door for the federal student loan program, and even if you think you're not going to want to use it, it makes it an option. But let schools make you an offer you can't refuse. At SLU, I used to save. We could get up in the 30 or 40,000 EFC range, and we were still putting need-based grants on the table. And I worked with a family this year because the calculations that the school used to award those. I worked with a family that had a six-figure EFC, and they still got a $2,000 need grant. So don't take for granted that you won't get anything off the FAFSA. I, especially first year, just encourage you to fill it out and just see what may come from that. This is the other piece of jargon I think I would give you that it's really, so EFC, remember that, and then cost of attendance. Cost of attendance is the number that determines the maximum amount of financial aid you can receive from a school. It's different at each school, but it's made up of the direct cost and some indirect costs. So the direct cost types of things are going to be things you'd think of: tuition, general fees that every student pays, room and board if you live on campus. But then it also has some other pieces in there that, because there's more to paying for college than just the direct costs. So things like books and supplies, and you might say, well, gee, Dave, why are books and supplies not a direct cost? Because at most schools now, the bookstore is separate from the school. Or you may, like for our kids, we bought their books off Amazon. Every registrar's office by regulation has to have the books that coincide with the courses that your students are taking, so that you can buy them from the bookstore on campus, or you can buy them from Amazon, and you can buy with confidence that you're buying the right book. I'm saying buying, sometimes one of the best ways to save some money, though, is to rent some of those books, especially in those intro classes that's not necessarily going to be your major later on, and you're not necessarily going to need those books later on. That's a good way to save some money, is renting those books. But also things like transportation, loan fees, miscellaneous. I always tease, miscellaneous. I guarantee, and those of you that have older students that have already been in college, you're going to grin when I say this. Miscellaneous, when you go to drop your student off at college, I guarantee you're going to need to make a Walmart run. And when you go up there, it's going to be everybody, usually a college town, everybody there is making their Walmart run, and you can look in their cart, and there's going to be bath mats and just stuff they need for their dorm room. That's miscellaneous, okay? Because there's more to pay for college than just those direct costs. But cost of attendance, it's an important number because it's the maximum amount of financial aid your student can receive for that academic year. This is my boss's favorite slide. She loves this slide, but don't get lost in these weeds. But it's just kind of illustrates how cost of attendance, and we talk about need-based aid and how it's calculated. So don't get lost in the weeds in this slide. But let's just say that column 1 represents four-year private schools, the most expensive schools. Maybe column 2 represents our four-year publics, a little less expensive, and column 3 represents our community colleges, the least expensive schools. And in the middle, we see EFC. EFC is the same at all the schools. It's not different because it's a different price at a different school. It's the same. It's the number that's your number that goes with you to each school. So what we see on the right then is cost of attendance minus EFC equals need. So and that need then determines things like a minute ago I mentioned subsidized student loans. Well, if that need is bigger than $3,500, then the loan can be subsidized. If there's room in that need to award things like federal work study, that's a need-based award. So when you hear things and people say it's a need-based award, this is the calculation they're doing to determine if your student is eligible. That cost of attendance minus CFC and then minus other aid equals need. So again, don't get lost in the weeds of that, but it's good just to have heard that and have a sense when people are throwing those kind of terms around what they mean. So let's kind of figure out where we're at. So we're starting out now, really starting to think about your admission applications and things like that. We're going to get to October. You're going to start filing your FAFSA. And then we're going to come to a point in time where schools are going to start pushing their award offers to your students. Initially, they may push their merit-based certificate, just like you gave them, just by applying from a mission, they would give you like their university scholarship or the merit-based scholarship that your student received based on GPA or ACT. That may come separate, but eventually they're going to send the award letter, the award notice, that gives you the entire picture, all of the aid that's being offered to your student. And it will include, remember, what is financial aid? It's going to include things like grants and scholarships and loans and work study, all right? And that's what I was saying about don't be fooled by those notices. Let's say they may start coming as early as November. That's really, really early. And if you get an award letter that comes in November, you want to make sure that's not an estimate because there's a lot of moving parts and that's really early. Most of them will probably start coming February and March, okay? So let's say you've gone to the mailbox one frosty February morning and there are 2 letters from 2 different universities and we're pretty excited. So we take them back inside and we open them up and School A has offered our student like $60,000 and we're pretty excited about this award notice. And School B has only offered our student like $30,000. Well, like obviously we're going to go to School A, right? But let's back up a second because School A has offered our student, they've offered them of the $60,000, $45,000 of that is a federal parent loan that we have to credit qualify for, and the rest of that is grants and scholarships. School B, of the $30,000, they've offered us $25,000 of grants and scholarships and a $5,000 student loan. So technically, School B has offered us the better offer. We can still do a parent loan at School B. So just pay attention to that. There's a lot of politics in that. Those are conversations you want to have with your student right now about, hey, when we start getting these award notices, we need to look at the whole thing. Because, you know, if it's Dream University that your student, it's their number one choice, and that's the $60,000 one, you're going to be doing a lot of backpedaling when you're saying, but no, see, really, that's not the same. That's not grants and scholarships. So have those conversations now, and don't get fooled by those. There are so many just good helps from your counselors here, from your school community, to help interpret those letters. When we think of outside scholarships and college savings plans, the number one source of private scholarships, and I always think there should be like a little drum roll, is really your high school counselors, because they know where to point your students. Then they'll point them to the local scholarships. They'll point them to the best resources where they will actually get aid from, like the Scholarship Foundation of St. Louis. We get to partner with you guys too, and just a great resource. But they're the best source. And I would encourage your students to listen to them, to do what they're asking them to do. I heard some good advice a few years ago from a counselor that said they encourage their students kind of during the financial aid season, that couple month period of time when it's really important to be filling out essays and applying for scholarships. They encourage their students to spend about one evening a week working on scholarships. They don't need to give their whole senior year to applying for scholarships, but there's an appropriate amount of time because they don't want to run in the door at the last minute asking for a recommendation letter or something. And there's really good, tonight we were seeing like the Naviance sites and things like that. They're really well organized sites to help apply for the scholarships that they may actually receive. But I don't know if you guys have a scholarship night sometime in the future, but let's imagine you do, and we all go to this award ceremony, and like one kid walks across the stage like 20 times, and we're like, well, that wasn't very fair. Why did they get that? Well, because they applied, okay? And some people say, well, you know, it's like only a $250 scholarship. Well, you know what I say to that? I say tonight as you're leaving, if you don't think $50 is a lot, just come by and hand it to me, okay? It suddenly got worth a whole lot more, right? I mean, those $250 scholarships add up, and I get it. We all want to win the Bill Gates scholarship or the Coca-Cola scholarship, and all of life is paid for. But those $250 and $500 local scholarships add up, so just encourage you to really apply. 529 savings plans, we could do a whole seminar on 529 savings plans, but there's really great information out there on the website, College Illinois savings plans. There's really great information. Some of the savings plans vary a little bit from one to the other. The main pieces of advice I would give you on 529, or those savings plans, are that when it comes time for those funds to be delivered from the 529 to the school, you want it to go straight to the school, not to you and then to the school. It would probably be fine, but because there are tax implications, if it comes to you, there's times there can be a tax liability to that. And you're like, well, I'm just going to give it right to the school. I know you are, but believe it or not, there's some folks that might not. And they had a tax benefit to put it in there, so it's just usually best if it can go straight to the school. Make sure it not only has your student's name on there, but whatever the ID is for the school, so that the school can make sure they get it posted to the right student. I always call this the photograph screen because everybody gets their phones out and starts taking pictures of it. All this is out on our website, and we've shared copies of the PowerPoint. You guys are welcome to all of that, but there are just some great resources out there. There's some big national ones, some good local ones. Our slides are probably designed a little more for the Missouri side of the river, but you guys they've got all the local ones that you guys need to apply for too. But just good private scholarship searches out there. Again, think in your mind, February 1st is just a good deadline. A lot of them come with those kind of deadlines. But good, everybody has the picture taken? Let's kind of slow everything down for just a second. These, like my last couple slides here. The financial aid thing can get to going kind of fast, and we think there's a million different things, but it really comes down to this. There's going to be, no matter what school we're talking about, whether it's community college or Harvard, like we've said, there's cost, there's going to be financial aid, and let's label financial aid for this purpose as our grants, our scholarships, and probably our student loans, though that probably breaks our parent heart if our students need to borrow, but depending on the schools we're looking at, that's probably in play. So cost minus financial aid, and many, many times there's a balance. If there's no balance, cool, we've got that figured out. But it's what to do with that balance. And we think there must be 1,000 different things to do, and we must be the only family that's not going to know what to do. And I'm here to tell you that's not true. You're going to know what to do. We can slow it down and simplify it. So cost minus aid, there's three things. There's three choices of how to pay that balance. There used to be an old oil filter commercial, and the guy would come on and say, you can pay me now or pay me later. You know, pay me now to change your oil, pay me later to change your engine. All of life really is like that. You can pay now or you can pay later. There's three different ways to pay. You can do a payment plan with the school, you can do a parent loan, or you can do a private student loan. And that's it. I mean, we've already kind of thought about outside aid and 529 savings plans and those kind of things. So when we kind of get down to this point, if there's a balance, we can do a payment plan, parent loan, or a private loan. So if we think of like the out-of-pocket expenses, if we do a payment plan, most schools will let you split payments up into 5 payments per semester, so like August through December, January through May. And so if we have a balance, we can pretty much, I always think it's good to think in terms of a year right now and not just a semester. So if we've got a balance of $5,000 for the semester, $10,000 for the year, and we can break that up into 10 payments, well, then it's going to be about $1,000 a month. Some of us just had a heart attack, and some of us are like, oh, cool, we're all right to check, right? I mean, our budgets are completely different, but that's the first option. The smaller the balance, the easier that option seems to be. But let's just say for now that cost minus aid, and we've got a balance of $10,000. The second option is to think about a parent loan. We've got federal parent loans that are out there. Federal parent loans are credit qualifying loans. They come straight off that studentaid.gov site as well. And if we do a parent loan, the parent loans right now with the interest rates that are on the loans are about $120 a month per $10,000 that we borrow. okay? So if we've got a $10,000 balance, our first option is payment plan for $1,000 a month. Second option, we could do a parent loan and it's $120 a month. Or we can defer everything till after our students are out of school, and there are private student loans out there, and those, they're usually variable rates, and I usually estimate them at 10%. We've been in some great interest rate times, but even then I found that to be pretty typical. At 10%, those are about $132 a month per $10,000 borrowed. So that's what you're seeing on the screen here. And so think about that, the power of that though. You're sitting in an admissions office, and they begin to give you some numbers, and you begin to understand, there's going to be a balance left over after that aid. So let's say you figure out that it's going to be $5,000. Okay, well then that's going to be about $500 a month. If I did a parent loan, it's about $60 a month, and if I push that off to the end on a student loan, then that's $60 a month or something. If it's $20,000, I mean, you see how quickly you can do that math, and so that makes financial aid slow down a lot, and you're not depending on someone to interpret that for you. You can begin to do that in your head. It's kind of like when you go out to buy a car and you already have your little car calculator payment thing sitting there in your hand, and the guy says the payment's going to be like $100 more than you think it's going to be, and you're like, wait a minute, I think it should be this. You can have those numbers in your head when you're out there in that admissions office. Some of the details on the parent loan and the private loans that we talked about. The federal parent loans right now come with a federal origination fee of 4.228%, whereas the private student loans have no origination fee. Usually that can vary by lender, but they usually have none. The fixed rate on the federal parent loans right now is 7.54% for the next year. The private loans typically are variable interest rates, though more and more of them are starting to have some fixed. So both of those are credit qualifying loans, but we can borrow up to cost of attendance. So we can borrow not just the direct cost of school, but we can borrow for those other costs of living. And like in future years, if your student doesn't live on campus, you can generate money for the off-campus housing that they may have. Information on the federal student loans, they actually have a fixed rate of 4.99% right now. With that rate, for every $10,000 our students borrow, that's about $106 a month. The parent loans, like you said, I would say 120 is easy to remember in your mind. They're actually $118.91 a month if you want to get detail with it. The private student loans are about $132 a month per $10,000 borrowed. We're kind of getting all right to the end here. So that time frame we've talked about, kind of August, December, you're kind of doing your college applications. October 1, you're going to start filing your FAFSA. You need to create an FSA ID to do that. It's very simple. You do that out there on the studentaid.gov site as well. It is a username and a password. When we work FAFSA workshops, very rarely does anyone have any trouble filling out the FAFSA. All of the issues we deal with on a workshop night are FSA ID issues. So a couple things. You can start getting it any time now, but you're going to need one for at least one parent, because a parent's going to have to sign the FAFSA, and you need one for your student, because you're both going to have to sign. Keep that in a safe place. You can use it for your student. Parents can use that for this student's whole college career, and if you have multiple students, parents can use that for all of your students. So keep it someplace safe. It's going to be a username and a password. And here's some of the common mistakes. So we parents go out there to start getting our FSA ID, and it's going to ask you for it's really simple. It's just going to be your social security number and your birthday. But sometimes when we start writing birthdays and down, we're on a federal site, we get nervous and we copy our birth date down for our student or theirs for us. Just take your time, make sure you put that information down correctly, and then make sure you know whose ID goes with who. November to March, we talked about award notices will coming. November is very early, probably more like February, March, but that's when they'll start coming out. May 1st is that time frame to get your deposit back from the colleges that you've applied for. Those are some great numbers and some great advice they were giving of how many colleges do we apply for. People are coming on FAFSA nights, and they're trying to add like 10 and 50. You can put 10 different schools on the FAFSA at one time. If you need to get more than that on there, you've got to go out later on and come back in and take one off and put one on. But that's just an awful lot of schools to actually be working with. But like I think that slide a minute ago showed us somewhere between 4 and 8 schools if you're actually applying and doing deposits to them. May through June, that's kind of when you've got to narrow it down. This is the school we're going to go to, and that's when you'll start doing orientations. June and July are really heavy months where you'll actually go. That's usually when your student will register for class, good chance possibly to meet your roommate. Hopefully by then you've taken tours of campuses and things like and know the school well. But that's May through June. July is when the initial billing information will usually go out, and first payments are usually due August 1st. You want to make sure, cost minus aid, 3 choices, you want to have that done by August. It's really tough when families are moving students into the dorm and that's still not locked down. So make sure you've got that all nailed down. You can, by July, you can really start putting all those pieces together. And then August, it is time to move them in, and if this is your first one, it can be interesting, I'll just say that. Lots of tears probably on the way back home. We just dropped our baby off at college. But super exciting times. We were working family welcome hospitality rooms like crazy last week. Piece of cake, right? Lots of real life in between those slides, and when we work with families, please know that we know that and that this isn't easy. Let me stop and take questions. I shared it. However, you guys share PowerPoints, but yeah.
So we're hoping that, and I think it did record, so we are going to be posting this presentation on YouTube and then sending the link out as well as the PowerPoint itself. So we'll have that emailed out to families and put on the Google Classroom and things like that.
I did that just perfect, and you have no questions, do you? Don't let me miss any, because we'll hang around afterwards too if you want to come up and ask questions, because I know it's getting late and you guys are probably getting ready to get out of here. Alrighty, I'll turn it back over, and we'll hang around down here if anybody has questions, but thanks for letting us come and share tonight.